Tuesday's first press conference with Secretary Carolyn Leavitt was a complete clown show, chock full of some very false claims. In fact, one of them was immediately disproven by a government report.
You know, just during this pause, Doge and OMB have actually found that there was $37 million that was about to go out the door to the World Health Organization, which is an organization, as you all know, that President Trump, with the swipe of his pen in that executive order, is no longer wants the United States to be a part of. So that wouldn't be in line with the president's agenda. Doge and OMB also found that there was about to be 50 million taxpayer dollars that went out the door to fund condoms in Gaza. That is a preposterous waste of taxpayer money.
Oh no, condoms for Gaza? What?
Sexual anarchy.
There'd be a lot of that there, apparently. Except that, it's actually not true. Yeah, I know, right? In fact, a government report does not back up Leavitt's $50 million worth of condoms claim, which again, it's a lot of condoms. According to a comprehensive report issued back in September by the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, not a penny of the $60.8 million in contraceptive and condom shipments funded by the United States in the past year went to Gaza. Okay? And by the way, this is for an entire year. Okay? In fact, the accounting shows that there were no condoms sent to any part of the Middle East. There happened to have been a small shipment worth about $45,680 of oral and injectable contraception sent to that region. All of it was distributed by the government of Jordan. So that said, you might be saying, well, wait a minute. Why are we sending $60 million worth of contraceptives anywhere in the world? That's not our problem, isn't it? I mean, when you think about it, you can't really have a problem with immigrants coming over for economic reasons, okay? And not ensure that women in developing countries that happen to, have large groups of migrants that are coming here, without ensuring that women in those developing countries can actually control their own reproduction, and therefore, what is the conservative saying? Can't breed them, don't feed, or can't feed them, don't breed them, right? Isn't that what you're talking about? Well, this actually helps with that and actually reduces the numbers of migrants that would need to come over for economic reasons. So reducing the birth rate and therefore reducing the resulting poverty in developing countries actually reduces immigration. I know. It's kind of smart foreign policy, really. In fact, it was so smart that in the first Trump administration, they ended up shipping about $40 million worth of condoms worldwide in just a year. But apparently, this time the Trump administration is banking on stupid. We're going to do the stupidest things for the stupidest reason. We're going to shut down all the foreign aid. Foreign aid's like 0.1% of the budget. Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. Shut down all the foreign aid, right? The reality is that most of our spending on foreign countries actually comes in the form of us bombing them, the military. But, Trump's not going to touch that at all. Now, speaking of smart, right, getting back to that, what else is smart is, taking, being part of international efforts to try to stop pandemics, to tackle disease. Well, she mentioned that we're already pulling out of the World Health Organization, and then we're also freezing efforts to distribute HIV medication to low-income countries. Last week, the Trump administration put a freeze on at least 90 days on funds purchasing most HIV treatments for Africa. Most notably affected is the $7.5 billion President Emergencies Plan for AIDS relief, also known as PEPFAR, which is administered by the Department of State. The result of that, of course, is going to be disastrous. If those drugs don't get sent, there are people that die. How many? Well, the New York Times cited a study that concluded that if PEPFAR were to be abolished, which it's looking pretty likely, as many as 600,000 people in South Africa alone would die over the next 10 years. South Africa. I seem to have remembered that there is a person that's very, very, close to this administration. It's from South Africa. Could it be? Oh, right. Elon Musk. But apparently he does not care about that country. Well, he doesn't care about that country. He doesn't care about our country either. Okay, he only cares about himself, enriching himself, and making sure that he's seen as the savior of humanity. Okay? Look, I think that they should care. But unfortunately, the actions the Trump administration has been taking is setting up the next pandemic. Okay? Again, withdrawing from the World Health Organization, silencing the CDC, while there is, literally a tuberculosis outbreak happening in Kansas, as well as, bird flu that is impacting egg prices right now. And so, I mean, it's kind of important to fund these things, all right? They've also frozen government-funded research grants, okay, for infectious disease. None of this is going to end well at all for us. And you want to combine that with RFK Jr.'s anti-vax stances, okay? All that together, we're looking at a disaster of our own making. You thought COVID was bad. Tip of the iceberg, okay? And we're about to hit that iceberg full force. Look, this goes far beyond them trying to save a few $1 million on contraception, okay, to be sent out to other places. And it's, look, all Trump's going to do with the money that he's saving, by the way, it's not going to come back to us. No, it's going to be used to fuel tax cuts for the rich, while having incredibly negative health outcomes, not just for the entire world, but for the United States as well, along with showing the world that the United States is no longer a leader that can be trusted to be capable of doing any good in the world whatsoever. On Tuesday, nearly 2 million government workers received an email offer from President Donald Trump. Quit your job and we'll pay you. Oh, okay. Well, now the email with the subject line, "Fork in the Road," purports to provide pay and benefits through the end of September 2025 for any worker that quits, and would even exempt them from the administration's return to office requirements. Oh, employees would have until February 6th to return the pre-written resignation letter to the Office of Personnel Management. So, wait, hold on here. Wasn't the issue, the whole alleged issue with the government, government workers, oh no, they're wasteful and unnecessary? If they are, then why offer to pay them to literally just not work? Doesn't that seem, I don't know, wasteful and unnecessary? Some interesting things happening here. There's some weird, dynamics at play here, the messaging, okay? Now, of course, I'm going to tell you what the real reason is here, at least that I think. But first, let's go to the government workers, who apparently, many of them are quite skeptical of this offer, and they should be. One said, and this is the Reddit's r/Fed News, which is a subreddit for federal employees and contractors. A lot of them were like, thanks, but no thanks. I'm going to show up to work. In fact, one said, I'll be honest, before that email went out, I was looking for any way to get out of this fresh hell. But now I am fired up to make these goons as frustrated as possible. RTO be damned. Hold the line. Look, a lot of the top commenters were in agreement with that sentiment. In fact, one wrote, this past week and a half, I've transitioned from being nervous and anxious to being pissed off. Much more in a fighting mood now. Another said, they can drag me out. I joined the federal government to serve Americans, to help my countrymen, and to help my country. I was so proud on the day I took my oath. Another said, they want to dismantle the very institutions that keep this country running, to tear down the work we've dedicated our lives to. Stay strong, federal employees. We are in this together, and we are not backing down. Look, I hope this is true. I hope that the majority of these federal workers feel this way. I really do. So now, why is the Trump administration doing this? Why do I think so? Well, I think they want to get rid of civil servants and replace them with loyalists to Donald Trump. That was kind of the whole plan in Project 2025. Now, of course, that goes along with vastly shrinking these agencies. So they would get rid of most of the people and then replace some of these positions with loyalists, enough to keep it just barely running, okay, while getting rid of, again, most people, because after all, they want to dismantle government. They want to sell it off piece by piece to the corporations. Now, of course, in order to do that, they would still need some loyalists to run these positions. Now, that said, why doesn't Trump just fire them? Well, you can't. It's not that easy, okay? He's got a he does not have the ability to fire these civil servants in order to make these sweeping changes that he wants. That said, he can replace the heads of these departments with his cronies, and largely he has. But again, the vast majority of the work is still being done by career officials that he wants to replace to have them go along with what he plans to do. Now, those civil servants could also stop or slow down his plans, leak what the administration is currently doing, as they already are. They're leaking a lot to Ken Klippenstein, right? So now with that, obviously Trump wants to get rid of them. And this is why they're doing this offer. Now, that said, this is until Project 2025 and this Schedule F classification change kicks in, right? So if that happens, then he could fire these workers, then he can replace them. But until then, he can't do anything. So he's offered to buy them out. And by the way, this is an idea that was taken from none other than Chief Twit Elon Musk, who, after he took over Twitter, now X, gave a similar ultimatum to workers with a nearly identical fork in the road subject line. Now, that said, when he took over, Musk promised severance packages to any workers who left immediately, but federal employees, they're not guaranteed, okay? They're not actually guaranteed that they'll get any money. Look, everybody's calling it a buyout, right? That said, when you look into the details, it doesn't really say they can stop working at all. In fact, it's more like telework until September. Remember, Trump ordered everybody back into the office, right? But now they're saying, well, if you quit now, then you can telework until September and still get paid for it. As an account points out, it's not a buyout. A buyout pays you to quit, e.g. live today, but will pay you through September. Only benefit you get for resigning is you can work from home. Same deal federal workers had until last week, except checks stop in September, no backsies. It's a terrible effing deal. Which, again, you would have to be pretty stupid to take. Stupid. Okay. Of course, the Trump administration was going to find some way to cheap out. Now, OPM, of course, had to amend its announcement by stating that employees are only expected to work, quote, in rare cases determined by your agency. So you still might actually have to work. And even after we're offered, like, no, go ahead and quit now, and we'll just pay you till September. No, turns out you actually have to work. This is why no one should put any trust in the Trump administration. Okay. As one poster says, they can't fire us as easily as they thought. So they are trying to scare us into quitting. Don't fall for it, wrote one poster on our Fed News. OPM is not your direct supervisor, HR, or agency department head. Only your agency can make this kind of deal with you. And look, even if they did, a lot of these agency heads have been replaced by Trump lackeys, okay? And so there's no guarantee that you're going to get paid. I mean, Donald Trump, pretty famous for, or I should say infamous, for stiffing workers. And so if you quit and expect to get paid, then you deserve what's coming to you, which will be a big fat nothing. Okay? Why Congress holds the purse strings, the president does not. He cannot make these decisions unilaterally. Anybody who understands the government and how it works would know this. So either Trump and Musk do not understand how government works, or they do. And if you're a government worker and you take this deal, they are planning to rob you. Either way, terrible deal. President Donald Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, is not happy about immigrants who know their rights.
Sanctuary cities are making it very difficult to arrest the criminals. For instance, Chicago, very well educated. They've been educated how to defy ICE, how to hide from ICE. And I've seen many pamphlets from many NGOs. Here's how you escape ICE from arresting you. Here's what you need to do. They call it know your rights. I call it how to escape arrest. There's a warrant for your arrest, and they tell you how to hide from ICE. No, don't open your door. Don't answer questions. Okay, you can call it know your rights all you want, but there's an order for their removal. They've been ordered removed by a federal judge after due process at great taxpayer expense. They need to go. But if we got to play that cat and mouse game, that's what we're going to do to every one of them gone.
Oh, is the head of the American Gestapo sad? What's wrong? Are the migrants too smart for your fasci ass? Because fascists, that's what you are. And look, the immigrants, they do have rights, okay? Now, what he is referring to, by the way, of the Know Your Rights campaign, is something that Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson put out. He's encouraging citizens whose homes are visited by immigration agents not to open the door unless presented with a warrant signed by a judge. Remember, this is what they're actually supposed to do. They're supposed to present a warrant from a judge, which is just due process, okay? We are all guaranteed under the Constitution due process, whether or not you're here legally, okay? You want to talk about following the laws, right? Well, you know what? Your agency has not been. It's been violating people's Fourth Amendment rights against illegal search and seizure. And they plan on violating a lot more than that. In fact, one of the things that they are trying to get around is a 1982 Supreme Court ruling called Plyler v. Doe. Now, that states that it is unconstitutional to deny undocumented students the same opportunities to receive a U.S. education as citizens. As a result of that decision, school staff are not allowed to ask students or parents about their visa or immigration status. So Plyler v. Doe is making a lot of white supremacists pretty angry. Oh, they're not happy with it. All right. Oh, we gotta undo Plyler v. Doe. We're gonna make sure that these undocumented students, that these children can be, targeted by immigration. Go right up into schools and arrest these children and drag them out in chains. That's what they want. That's what they want. Now, currently, of course, if ICE shows up at a school, which, by the way, Trump's recent executive order says they can do now, which they weren't able to do before. But if they do show up at a school and they want to arrest someone, they've got to show up with a judicial warrant signed by a judge. They can't just show up with an administrative warrant. signed by an immigration officer. Okay, those warrants only authorize ICE agents to detain and arrest someone. Okay, they do not authorize them to enter private property like school grounds. So if they do, then they are violating the law. But you can be sure, of course, that ICE does not care. They will violate the law anyway. Okay, we're probably going to see a bunch of that. And how long before we see images of literal school children being hauled out in chains, in handcuffs for deportation? Okay, first to be put into a private prison and then to be deported. That's what we're going to see. Okay, that's what the ultimate goal of these fascists will be, to haul people out, haul literal children, okay, who did not come here, okay, of their free will, all right? They were brought along here with their families. Doesn't matter to them. Doesn't matter. These people, they're going to come after the children in the schools, okay? Our country is not a shining city on a hill. It is a prison camp. That's what it's becoming, all right, under the right wing. Now, there's one more thing. Homan actually went on to speak with Megyn Kelly, okay? And during their conversation, talked about something interesting. So Kelly actually brings up, why don't we just try to get the immigrants to self-deport? Now, that's something that we've talked about before during the first Trump administration. Republicans are like, well, why don't we just make conditions so bad that the immigrants will self-deport? Okay, but this time, Kelly brought up something interesting. She had asked, hey, why don't we get them to self-deport, not by making things horrible, but by giving them money? Quote, here's a big check waiting for you. Get out, get down there, and we'll work with the government to make sure these people get paid. I know it sounds outrageous. Is that crazy talk? Homan replied, actually, you know what? No, we're considering this. We're considering this idea, to pay people to self-deport. Wait a minute. I thought y'all were worried about the taxpayer expense of all these immigrants that are living here. They're taking the benefits. They're taking taxpayer money. Here, we're going to give you a giant taxpayer check to get out. Does that seem kind of strange to you? To then promise to pay them to get them out? Oh, of course, I know that would be a lie if they ever offered that. They would never actually pay people, okay? No, they'd just be like, oh, you thought we were going to actually give you the money? Psych! You guys are stupid. No, we were never going to pay you. Now stay out, right? Gigantic lie. They would never, ever, ever see the money. But the whole idea of promising them that seems extremely hypocritical, okay? The whole premise, okay? Because on the one hand, they're saying, oh, these illegals, they're handouts, they're taking the taxpayer money, oh my God. Of course, it's not true. Immigrants actually pay more into taxes than they ever actually take out. But them offering those same immigrants that, on the one hand, they were blaming for taking out the taxpayer money, offering them taxpayer money to leave, super hypocritical. But it also shows you another thing. The fact that this was never really about the cost. This was never really about the law, as ICE loves to violate the law and the Constitution. No, it has only ever been about white supremacy. The recent brutal crackdown on undocumented immigrants across the country has shown us a bit of an irony. Turns out that Native Americans and U.S. citizens from places like Puerto Rico have been caught up in these arrests from these numerous ICE raids across the country that have been happening since Trump took office. In fact, according to witnesses, those who are getting caught in these immigration raids are being targeted due to their race or skin color, which, of course, is not a surprise, right? This is all based on racial profiling. Now, the Navajo Nation office, for example, was recently flooded with calls from tribal members living off reservation Many of them reported being questioned about their identity by ICE officers, according to Native News Online. So this is a great example of how dumb and racist ICE is. Okay? Literal Native Americans, people who were here before us, indigenous people, and they're the ones getting interrogated and even arrested by ICE. I wish I was kidding about it, but no. There are already so many instances of Native people being harassed that the Navajo Nation president actually had to address it on tribal radio station KTNN. In that address, he detailed many accounts of negative and sometimes traumatizing encounters between ICE and Navajo Nation citizens. He advised the residents, as a result, to carry their ID, driver's license, and their certificate of Indian blood, which I think no one should have to do, especially people who are indigenous to this country. They were the first Americans. They are United States citizens, and yet they are getting profiled. Now, NBC News, of course, reached out to ICE regarding the detaining and questioning of Navajo Nation citizens and complaints about being racially profiled, and yet they have not received any response, and I doubt they will. Okay? I believe that they will be ignored because, let's be honest, ICE is a rogue agency under a president who is attempting to become a dictator. Okay? Trump's talked about deporting American criminals to other countries. Okay? I mean, he could start with himself. That would be great because he himself is a criminal, but I doubt it would happen. Now, speaking of criminals, of course, I know he claims that ICE is only going after the violent ones, right? Oh, we're only going after the violent criminals, the people that are a danger to the American citizens. Well, on Sunday, almost half the people that have been arrested, 48%, actually had non-violent offenses on their record or had not committed any crimes. So what happened to going after just the criminals? They're not going after just the criminals. No, they're going after everybody. And you know what they're calling the people arrested that have had no, criminal records? They're calling them collateral arrests. Yeah. Oh, but you don't understand. Didn't they commit a crime by being here illegally? They're illegal. I mean, that's the illegal alien part, right? No, it turns out that all that is a civil violation. Living here without documentation. Okay, but what about the people who cross the border illegally? That is a misdemeanor. Okay, at most. These are not the violent criminals, okay? You know who the violent criminals are? The ones who Trump let out of the prisons from January 6th, okay? He pardoned the violent criminals. They're now out on the streets. These are people that have beat up police with flagpoles, sprayed them with bear spray. Those people are running free as a result of Trump. That is, of course, if they're not being pursued by law enforcement for possession of child sexual abuse material, as I had detailed on another episode. Okay. But back to the arrests of indigenous people, which should be an absolute outrage. Apparently, the racists are so stupid that they cannot tell the difference between a person from Central America versus a Native American. That, or much more likely, they have the orders to detain, to arrest anyone who is not white. Look, as Rosanna Eugenio, legal director at the New York Immigration Coalition, said, quote, "When you don't have enforcement priorities, everyone is subject to detention. How do you tell that someone does not have legal status in this country or is in the process of seeking legal status? You can't tell that by looking at someone. But it will create conditions where there will be profiling of communities, immigrant communities, and communities of color." And there you go. The widespread racial profiling of Americans. That's what you're having right now. But, to try to find these so-called bad ones, right? At one point in my life, I thought that maybe we had learned our lesson from like the past. For example, the World War II, right? Where people of Asian ancestry were rounded up and put into camps. That is a great stain on our history. Or how about, speaking of stains on our history, Eisenhower's extremely racist Operation Wetback, okay, where they deported tons of Mexicans, okay? I mean, that was in the 1950s. But the United States had a history of doing racist deportations and racist policy. Like, for example, what we did to the Chinese back in the 1800s that built our railroads, okay? We railroaded them, that's for sure. So, no, we obviously did not learn our lesson from any of those racist things. In fact, what we're doing now is repeating history. Maybe it's because not enough people learned it, or maybe the people who did took the wrong lesson from it. Which I guess it would explain partly of why we went from fighting Nazis to electing them. A member of the party of so-called family values believes that children, students, should be forced to work at McDonald's if they can't afford school lunch. So this is Georgia Representative Rich McCormick arguing that, hey, Donald Trump's freeze on federal spending, which was delayed by a court, and takes food out of the mouths of children, is actually a great opportunity to, get rid of free lunch so those damn moocher children can get back to work.
You're telling me that kids who stay at home instead of going to work at Burger King and McDonald's during the summer should stay at home and get their free lunch instead of going to work? I think we need to have a top-down review.
I think you're painting a lot of these kids with a broad brush. I would say that's not necessarily a fair assessment of all of the kids. So you would say all the kids in your district who use the free lunch, for example, or breakfast, they're all just sitting at home and not working. Okay, I just want to clarify because that seems like what you were trying to insinuate.
This gives us a chance. This gives us a chance, though, to see where is the money really being spent. Who can actually go and actually produce their own income? Who can actually go out there and do something that makes them have value and work skills for the future? I mean, how many people got their start in fast food restaurants when they were kids versus just giving a blanket rule that gives all kids lunches in high school who are capable of going out and actually getting a job and doing something that makes them have value, thinking about their future instead of thinking about how they're going to sponge off the government when they don't need to. We don't give people value. We don't give them the ability to dig themselves out when we penalize them for actually working and actually keep them on welfare. That's what's been the inner city problem for a very long time. We need to have a top-down review so we can get people out of poverty, because you know what? America's very good at creating jobs and giving people worth. And we've been very traditionally good at that, but we're losing our way. And that's when we give people incentives to stay at home and not work. That doesn't work for America.
But a lot of these kids aren't even of working age. They're young kids, and as you well know, and also some of the kids in Head Start, they're 5 and under.
Remember, he's talking about students, right? Whose primary job is to get through school, to get educated. All right, but where do I even begin with this guy? Okay, obviously. Him talking about, these children, they need to work to have value, to have any sort of worth, or else they are worthless and they're sponging out the government. Remember, this is how these people think about other human beings, right? That apparently if you are not generating profits for a giant corporation, that you have no inherent worth or value. That's what he's saying. That's what he's saying. Okay. Now, the other thing is, so you need to work so you can have, skills, right? Skills. Okay. Well, what skills are you getting from working at McDonald's? Now, I know that the people who work at McDonald's, they have to be good with customer relations. You got to deal with people, right? That time management, obviously. You got to be fast, organized. They've got to learn how to operate all the different pieces of equipment, fryers. They've got to have time organization skills, time management skills. They've got to be able to handle money. They've got to be able to work these credit card machines. So there are skills that come along with that. Okay. having a low skill, this whole idea of like, oh, low skilled or no skilled jobs, it's just one of those things that justify poverty wages, right? I know all that. But this guy, he is part of the same group of people that say, well, if you want to, if you want to get paid a wage that you can actually survive on, then you need to get a real job. Stop working at McDonald's. So my question then to him would be, are fast food jobs that you can get real skills from, and are therefore actual jobs? and if that's the case, then the people who work them currently, do they not deserve a living wage for working a real job? Or are they not real jobs? And so if they're not real jobs, then what skills would these children who are, let's be real, okay, that are already impoverished and therefore would need free lunch, okay, what skills would these poor children in poverty be, getting? I mean, these are very simple questions, okay, that I doubt he would be able to answer, okay, in any sort of satisfactory way. Look, I think it's obvious why he has this position. He wants child labor. Child labor allows corporations to save money by underpaying child workers, okay, that's it. That drives down wages for adult workers. And by the way, what happens if those, child workers can't find a job? What, should they just starve then? How pro-family of you. Real nice people. And by the way, from someone who was a doctor, he said he was an ER doctor, right? Well, I'm sure then if you're a doctor, you have to be aware that humans do better, have better cognition, can actually think, when they actually have money to be fed, okay? When they actually have food in their stomachs, okay? You would think that, you would know that. I mean, okay, let's have you study for your med school exam after having not eaten for 2 days. We'll see how well you do on your test, all right? Let's see it. They'll never do that. No, it's only poor kids. Okay, it's only poor kids that have to work. Rich kids, they never have to. They're the ones that can sit there because their parents can already afford it. They can sit there and have everything paid for, and then be fed and do better on their test scores. This is all a way of trying to allow rich children to get a better education than poor children. Okay, because then if poor children don't have a good education, then they can't compete with the rich children for jobs, okay, for money. That's it. So now, in addition, by the way, multiple studies have shown that free school lunches actually lead to better health and improved school performance without having any negative impact on the students' weight. But of course, here's the thing. As I already mentioned, feeding children is not a priority of the Republican Party. Never has been. No, instead, what they want to do is they want to cut government and then feed themselves with more tax cuts for the rich. Now, there was a candidate in this election who talked about free school lunches, who actually signed a bill to have universal school lunch. That was Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota. Okay? Look, I like Governor Walz. I like the fact that he talked about, hey, we're supposed to be good for, to our neighbors. It is a shame that he was not actually at the top of the ticket, because I think he would have done better had the consultants not gotten to that campaign and told him, shut up, stop calling Republicans weird, stop talking about how, we're supposed to be good to our neighbors, stop talking about how, the socialism that you did in Minnesota. Well, what happened, right? Now, it turns out that, by the way, universal school lunch is pretty popular. According to a YouGov poll conducted back in August of 2023, about 6 in 10 U.S. adults favored providing universal school lunches to every child. 57% think that students should have also should also have access to free breakfast. And most other respondents say that, well, okay, maybe universal is going too far, but definitely for poor kids. Yeah, you should have school lunches at least for the poor kids, people from low-income families. So that's a majority of Americans that are like, duh, of course we should feed the children. Why wouldn't we? And yet you've got the Republicans saying, oh, no, screw them. Starve the children unless they're willing to work at McDonald's. Now, why would Harris not run on something so incredibly popular? I don't remember her campaign talking about universal school lunches. Once again, I think the consultants got to her. But I do think that certainly had she won, she would not be saying the kinds of things that this guy is saying, that, oh, you know, we should take this opportunity to fund school lunches, school meals for hungry children, and instead force them to work at McDonald's. This is the same party that also said something like, well, instead of school lunches, we should make the poor children, you know, unclog the toilets, you know, and work as janitors in the schools. These people are so giddy about putting the children to work, you know, for basic things like food. It just really shows you who they are and what their priorities are, which is, of course, to put Americans, adult Americans, out of work in these jobs and replace them with an army of lesser paid poor children. That's who these people are. Absolute total ghouls. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe, hit the bell icon in order to get notified whenever a new video is released. And if you want to support independent, progressive media through this difficult time where it seems like everybody is shutting down, you can become a member on our YouTube page, you can become a subscriber on Facebook, or you can go to my Patreon. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf. Thank you.